This one is going to be, I might as well tell you the title on this one, really. So this one is going to be called Vampire Realm. And there's actually going to be two parts to it, because I'm going to try and break it down, otherwise it'll be a very long video. But there was two different, completely different parts. So one part I'm going to go through the dream. I'm going to break down, obviously, my thoughts on it and a lot of information on it. And then I'm going to go into a second part. And the second part is actually going to go into a lot of confirmations that actually came more afterwards. And there was quite a few, actually. So I'm going to just do part one first. But this will still give you quite a good understanding as to what it's about. But part two gives you a lot more in the way of confirmations, scripture, stuff like that. Okay. So this dream starts then. So with me being in a either a very futuristic airplane of some sort or a spacecraft. I think it's far more likely to be a spacecraft because there was crew on board. So obviously with a fighter, you're only going to get one or two people, whereas this had quite a few people. Let's say, again, I didn't write down the number, but let's say it was about, I don't know, 5 people, maybe less, but not your average kind of amount really to have on an aircraft. But so I think this is more a spaceship, and obviously I think it will make a lot more sense as a spaceship, to be honest. So our crew we were thrown into us flying around. Again, I didn't see outside or anything like that, but we're getting hit, so we're getting shot at, and it's kind of like your typical like shaking the craft as it gets hit. So rather than machine gun, if you see what I mean. So it's just that kind of thing. So it's almost like you see on, I don't know, like Star Trek or something like that, when they get zapped by something. It shakes it, but no explosions, if you see what I mean. So it's not like it's missiles and things. It's just that kind of thing, like the shield's getting hit, let's say. Anyway, so we're getting shot at, and when we do get hit, the moment of impact. So if you imagine this is like the blow that really makes this ship explode, and that's it, game over. So if you imagine that this final shot comes in, and that's it, that's all the ship can take. And at that moment of impact, it sort of stops and it sort of freezes, basically like freezes in time for a moment, and then somewhat out of time something happens. So you've got this bit where this kind of black stuff kind of goes on like faces and stuff like that and starts taking over their face. Really, really strange. It's kind of like black, blocky, like sort of thing that goes across her face. It looks like it's kind of like infecting, if you see what I mean. It like sort of starts stretching across the face, and it's almost like it's not just on the surface. It's almost like it's going into the face and stuff as well. Yeah, and I put, oh, there you go. Yeah, so it says replacing biological matter with this kind of black stuff. And it got to a certain amount of this, and then we're suddenly transported somewhere into this completely different dimension. And I know this breaks it up just a tiny bit, but it was very much like Neo in the Matrix. When Neo, the hacker name, of Keanu Reeves in that, where he takes the I forget the color. Is it the red pill? I think it's the red pill. Takes the red pill, comes out of the dimension that he feels is the real world, a bit like us here, but he's transported out into a different, what like for him would be a different dimension, but it's actually the real world, and what happens there is you've got that mercury sort of looking liquid that rises up till it gets to his neck, and he's kind of putting his neck up, and then it goes down his mouth, and that's it. Then he's I say transported. It's like a transport thing, but he then wakes up in the real world. So this was very, very similar. Had a lot of similar elements, obviously, where I'm saying this is black stuff and it gets to a certain level, and then we're somewhere else. Okay. So where did I get to? Blah 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 blah. Yep. So very similar, but it's black stuff. Yeah. Okay. Then we start coming in, sort of like landing speed. Let's say coming in landing speed into. We're already in the atmosphere. Let's say so. It's almost like we've already gone through any kind of atmosphere, and now we're coming in relatively lowish level, hundreds of feet, still maybe a couple of thousand feet or something like that, but we're coming into this new environment. Okay, so what this environment looked like was this planet was had a very, very blood red sky, very, very blood red sky, with some clouds going across, which are kind of like, again, orangey red sort of clouds. This was a very dominating red sky. I mean, if you imagine a beautiful blue sky at summer for us, it was like that, but with red, and very dark. It wasn't like it was pitch black, but it was still like it was daytime for them, but it was still closer to nighttime as it is for us because of this red sky. Very, very dark red sky. And the landscape also, as we're going over, we're kind of like looking out windows and stuff like that as this ship is our space. Again, I'm going to say it's a spaceship. I'm pretty sure it was. Spaceship's coming in, and we're looking for a place to land. But yeah, we're looking across and we're seeing this black. It's a black landscape. Not all of it's black, but a lot of it is. We're coming over this big, let's say, this big field of what looks like coal. If it was just out in the open, you could just go and pick it up. It was like that. So there's big, let's say, coal fields. Okay, black, but again, very block-like. So they're all like cubes, lots of cubes, and they're all like side by side. But they're again at little sort of slightly different heights. So you could see that element of blockiness to them, rather than it just being flat. And I guess from above looking sort of grid-like, it wasn't like that. They were all at different heights and stuff like that. But it looked like, a computerized coal field. And I said that it looked very Minecraft-esque sort of looking. As we flew over this landscape, we actually were looking for a place to land. In coming in, I think we saw like some sort of a city or some sort of a populated area in some way, and we're coming down just around that area. And so we know that wherever this place is inhabited. So as we come down and we get out of this craft, we start then walking forward, and they're walking forward as a tribe, as a people, whoever it is, coming to meet us. Yeah. Just like a typical sort of first interaction between two peoples that don't know each other. Okay, so there's one of their leaders that's coming forward, and one of ours is kind of leading and walking forward, but again with a crew behind. So if you imagine it's sort of like that. So this man from their side comes forward, and is talking to us, and we can understand what they're saying. What this person's saying, and then I think it's a case of almost like I looked away or something like that, and then looked back again, and then the person was still dressed the same, but now they were a woman. But before, a moment ago, they were a man, which was again really strange because it was literally seconds later. So then he or she then said that they just randomly start talking about how they occasionally abduct people from Earth. And so they'd obviously been in contact with Earth in secret, because we didn't have any kind of knowledge of this at all. This was new information. Again, certain dreams you'll have back knowledge. You'll be thrown in with a certain knowledge level of, okay, this is going on at the moment. There's a war going on. This is going on, and then you're thrown in, and you're like grabbing your rifle, and you know what's going on. This was not like that. So obviously, this is the case that we were completely unaware that this stuff was going on, and that they were abducting people from Earth. And so they'd been in contact with us in secret. They told us that they'd actually saved us from death. And obviously, if you imagine back to that moment where there was this massive impact, and it's almost like a freeze frame or super slow down as things are sort of exploding and stuff around us, and then there's things happening, and then we're gone. So they're basically saying, we saved you. We're the ones who actually have saved you, and we've brought you to us. But in doing so, what we did is we changed your body. Okay, that's just given me something very interesting to think about. Okay. Very, yeah. Sorry, I know I'm a bit all over the place there for a second, but that's just something that's just suddenly come up. That's just made me think of something. Um, Hopefully I'll remember that. So, as we, yeah, so this person changes from man to woman, etc., etc. They've told us, they've saved us from death, because obviously, we were just about to explode in this craft. But in doing so, you're now like us. We've changed you, so you're like us now. Um, and um, we're vampires. Okay, so and this black landscape then was explained. So it was explained as all being blood, basically. So it was like super super thick and congealed and dried blood, and it was hidden within these blocks. But that's what the blocks were. They were black, but it was from blood that had dried. Let's say. And they were slowly harvesting it. Obviously, to them, that's their resources. Like, I guess for us, the resources of this planet is what sustains us. The resources of that planet is what sustained them. Okay, and they were slowly mining these blocks, harvesting it, and so we'd been made immortal in becoming these vampires. But this community was concerned about their blood resources running out, and they were sort of sharing with us their concerns um, in securing new supplies for the future, because they were kind of really concerned, because they were aware of the fact that there were only thousands of years until all their supply was going to completely run out. So they needed to actually find out right now what they can do to secure new supply. And obviously, on our scale, we're thinking thousands of years. If you think about us with our kind of like coal and oil reserves and all these kind of things, and we're like, oh, they say all the time, don't they? Oh, we've only got 10 years left. We've only got 40 years left. We keep finding more. But interesting, they're thinking on much, much grander scales, much, much bigger scales of their plans. So, but it almost felt like we were all already rationing to a certain extent, because what they do is they hand us these lipsticks. So these lipsticks are infused with blood, so they're a red lipstick, and they basically sort of say, anytime that you feel low and you need some blood, then you just apply this lipstick. Okay, so and it actually showed a close-up of the lips, which was really, really strange. So it showed, if you imagine like a real close-up of lips and this lipstick going on, as it did, it showed these really coarse black hairs that would come out the lips, and it was almost like these hairs were kind of like soaking the blood up and drawing it into the body, if you see what I mean. It was really, really odd. But it was like an emergency supply. So I kind of said, it's like having a snack or something like that, that you've brought with you when you're going somewhere. So just in case you don't have access to any blood supply, well, look, you just quickly apply this and this will refresh you. And this was the thing. So I did have it. We all used this lipstick, and then we felt like super, super refreshed. And it was basically like, I kind of used an example of like, it's like being in a gym, and you've been on the treadmill for like 15 minutes or so, and you've been sprinting along, sweating loads, and you get off and you're like, oh, I have a quick, the water things, that's ice cold water, and you just feel like super refreshed. And that's how we felt in the dream, was just incredibly, incredibly refreshed after having this. I do actually mention as well that when I was actually writing this dream down, so this happened 29th of September. I'm writing it sort of around December 2025, January 2026 is roughly when I'm writing it. It just so happens that those coarse hairs, as I'm thinking about coarse hairs and I'm writing it, my eldest daughter watches Spider-Man, the older Spider-Man ones that we've had with Tobey Maguire in as Spider-Man. And it was the first one, and it shows, the barbs that when he becomes Spider-Man and he's first discovering his powers, he has those barbs, doesn't he? So he can go up walls. Well, these super, super coarse, like those kind of things made me think a little bit like those, that transformation from me going from a human to a vampire. This was the realization of how I've changed, I suppose, was these hairs that were coming out, just like he discovers he's got these barbs and he can suddenly start climbing walls. So that kind of reminded me of that a little bit, actually. So we're going to go into thoughts. I mean, as far as transparency goes, there is a little bit that I mentioned that the day before we had Guardians of the Galaxy on in the background. Again, same daughter, actually. She went through a bit of a sort of superhero film phase, where she was watching, Spider-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy. What else did she go through? I can't remember what else. Oh, she went through Star Wars and stuff like that as well. She just went through a few phases of films that were part of like a franchise, let's say, that had quite a lot of films to them. She started to watch a few of those. But anyway, so we had Guardians of the Galaxy on in the background. So I'll mention a bit that it was very similar. I'll fully admit it's very, very similar. So there was a part where there's some sort of a bad guy who's got a hammer. The hammer gets smashed. Inside the hammer, there is some sort of a gemstone, and the good characters touch this gemstone, and from it they receive power. And I think their face either sort of glows like a purpley colour, the same as the gemstone. I think it's purple. Again, I've never really probably sat down and watched that film. I don't think all the way through. I've just seen snippets of it. But yeah, it's kind of like dark, like aspect to their face. So it was admittedly very similar to this dream. So that's the transparency aspect to it. I'll go through my thoughts. And I'm going to do this in a certain way because now I want to incorporate this new revelation, and I'm pretty sure this is part of what I think it means. So thoughts. So well, in reading back the whole thing, it was interesting that that I've touched on it anyway, actually. So well, in reading it back, that these aliens had sort of saved us. Basically, could this have been a deception because of the environment? Okay, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Is that could it have been a deception that actually we just died? We just died, and we were all non-believers, and we were being taken to hell. And so this was just some elaborate ruse as to, oh, we saved you, this, that, all that sort of stuff. And where we were was now actually hell. Maybe that's what that was. Maybe that's what that was showing, because it was like the red sky and the darkness and all that kind of stuff. And what I would also mention as well is the colouring, red and black. Now, red and black, I'd never really associated with Satanism, but my mum, I think, it's my mum said something about, oh yeah, that's kind of like those colours, isn't it? You see that with clothes and stuff, red and black. I never really noticed that, I suppose, but for me, red and black has come up in a few different dreams that's pointed me to end times stuff. So it's pointed me to the Antichrist, the beast system, and just the whole satanic kind of agenda, really. It's been in the dream. It's been in a couple of dreams. I would highly recommend that you watch one called Suffering Servant. And it's also got it's / the beast system, so it moves into a couple of different things. But there's an aspect there of red and black in a first part of a dream, and then there's a red and black that's in another. It's all part of the same dream, I believe. It is, isn't it? Yeah, it's all part of the same dream. But there's red and black again, which is then linked to a kind of satanic kind of figure. There's red and black in another dream that was, again, these are months and months apart, where I can't remember what it was called. I know it's near one that's called Heavenly Encouragement, but I don't think it's that one. Oh, yes, I've got it. It's called Access All Areas. Access all areas ? Because you don't obviously have access all areas. That's the one that also has an element of black and red. And I realize that's the key. So you get with a lot of these dreams, you'll get something that's a key, and it just unlocks everything else about the dream. That was the key for me, was this bit in a lift, and it's red and black. and then it's like, now all this lack of access makes sense, and this being trapped and stuff makes sense. But again, watch that and you'll see all of that kind of stuff. Then I went in, I've gone into here about the realizations I had through another dream, which was called zombie apocalypse. That is a fascinating dream, that one. Zombie apocalypse. And that one, again, I got revelation. I was literally just doing the washing up. You know, I'd even filmed the dream. I'd actually filmed the dream, put it on the YouTube channel and gone through it. Thought, what an interesting dream. Wasn't that interesting, everybody? You know, what does it mean? Don't really know. But maybe it'll come back. Maybe it'll come to me at some point. Well, it did months later. I think it was well, maybe not months later. I think I'd watched the dream back, and there was something that was said, and it was just like a trigger word or something like that. Was it that one? Oh no, that was something different. No, this one, I was just washing up, and then suddenly there was one thing, and then it all clicked. I was thinking about the vampires, and I was thinking, oh yeah, the vampires in this dream, they were the ones who were trying to take over a city, and they were right at the beginning stages of this zombie apocalypse that's happening. And I was like, they're the few, but they're the few that are controlling the many, and the many were the zombies. The zombies were in this one anyway, very, very mindless. You know, they were just obeying commands from these vampires. And I realized what it was really talking about was that they were all unbelievers, all of them. So they're all dead. And what I mean by that is all of us are. If you're not a believer and you've sinned once, well, then you're a dead man walking. You know, that is really what it is, essentially. So without Christ, then when you finally die, then you'll receive the judgment, and the judgment will be you failed the law. You know, you were given all the information around what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and you didn't seek the forgiveness and the blood sacrifice of Jesus, and therefore, unfortunately, you will be put into what's called Hades, or in the English we call it hell, don't we? So unfortunately, that's where you go. So that's what I realized about these. So the vampires and the zombies, and that did actually help me with other types of dreams, because I did have other dreams. I've got another one yet to film, which has zombies in it again. But this understanding all came from the Holy Spirit, of course, because then I actually found it in a dream book. So I got a dream book, again, bearing in mind that zombie and vampire video would have been filmed in maybe, it was around the sort of summer sort of time, so June, July, August, let's say, of 2025 was when it would have been filmed. I then got a dream book for my birthday, which was in October that 2025, and that's a massive chunky book. It's about as chunky as this. This is my Bible. It's about as chunky as this. It's a huge book, and I looked out of curiosity. I was starting to go through and write out my dream journal, and I was using it for interpretation. But I was also just curious about dreams I'd actually already filmed, and I thought, I'll look these bits and pieces up. And I looked them up, and they confirmed exactly what I thought they meant anyway, even the obscure stuff. So obviously, vampires and zombies, to me, I mean, if you ask somebody on the street, what does a zombie and a vampire mean in a dream? I think most people would just go, I don't know, I haven't got a clue. But then I looked it up, and it confirmed exactly what I said, which I'll go through in a moment, because I've written them all down, just to kind of confirm that back to you. Because obviously I've told you what I felt that it meant was kind of like that the vampires were a part of the hierarchy, let's say, but they were at the top of the hierarchy, and they were the ones who were hatching all the plans and stuff like that, for things. And then the zombies were not, they were lower on the food chain. They were more in number, but they were kind of unaware of what was going on, and they were just acting on instinct, or just acting based on the orders that they were given by vampires. Okay, so that's that bit. That was it. The other thing I thought was quite interesting actually was to do with the fact that we were told, weren't we? As I mentioned, we were told that we were immortal. I was like, well, if we're immortal, why do we need a supply of blood? Because if we don't have blood, then are we not immortal? So it felt like that was a lie in itself. Well, does that mean that we're going to die in some way if we don't have blood? And you see that in zombie films. I don't know if you've seen that. I can't remember the name of the film. There is a film where escapes me the name of that film. Because I've got stacks of films. I used to really be into vampire films. Had like almost all of them. You know, any big ones, big vampire films. I had loads of them, absolutely tons of them. So, but there's one in that where when they don't get a steady supply of blood. I mean, when they do have a steady supply, they look human. But when they lose their supply, then they devolve into, you know, winged ones, and they can't control themselves, and they just go out just killing people and stuff like that. Whereas when they're in their human form, they're far more controlled, you know, that sort of thing. So very, very different. But yeah, it kind of made me think of that in a way. So what would happen? So I did, in transparency, actually, I did film this a little before, and I've refilmed it because I started going down a really odd route that I don't really want to go down, to be honest. So I'm going to leave that bit. In looking, so I'm going to go through vampires just real quick. So in the dream book, what it says. So vampire is, and it says like number 1, 2, 3, 4, all the different options. Either means totally sold out to the devil, or number 2, resurrection of something from the past that sucks life out of you. So an issue, some problem that you've had in the past that has now come back as a problem. A resurrection of something from the past. Number 3, powerful evil spirit, like a principality that seeks to take the life of you. So that's what I think it means. In my experience, it's a powerful, super powerful entity. A principality meaning top of the demonic realm. Okay, so you've got a hierarchy, just like this. The angelic realm has a hierarchy, like the archangels, and then you've got what's it called? I won't go through them. There's a few of them, but I'm going to mess up actually with the names. So, but archangels obviously being the top, and then you have other levels of authority. So then you've got, so that's number 3. Number 4, spirit behind chronic fatigue syndrome. And if you think about it, obviously chronic fatigue is a lack of energy and stuff like that. So you're sapped of your energy, aren't you? So I can sort of see where they're coming from there. And then you've got the zombie, meaning is a Christian who claims to be alive, but who is without true spiritual life. Someone unable to think for themselves. Again, I've mentioned that, haven't I? Someone bewitched and controlled by another. Again, I mentioned that with the vampires. Interesting how close it was. I mean, I personally think it's more to do with where it says here, a Christian who claims to be alive but who is without spiritual. I would actually just say a non-believer is how it was my interpretation anyway. Now, I want to get into something now, which unfortunately I don't have the scripture on, purely because it just came to my mind. Okay, now I'm going to go back. You know where I had that moment of just, and I have that sometimes in videos where I'll just get some revelation on it as I'm reading it, and then it's kind of too late. I've got to try to unwrap that now. But I was talking, wasn't I? I was talking about, so the people were occasionally abducted from Earth and been in contact with us in secret. They told us that they had saved us from death, but we were now vampires. So what it made me think of actually was us being taken in a way as a complete opposite of how Jesus saves us. So obviously, if you think of the rapture aspect, okay, so you've got us on earth, then we meet Jesus in the sky, and then we're taken to heaven. Okay, so what happens? Our bodies are changed, aren't they? Our bodies are changed in a blink of an eye. So look that up, because I'll probably put it in the notes as to what the scripture is. But in the blink of an eye, our bodies are changed, and we are given what we call our glorified bodies, where we are immortal. We're in, we cannot be harmed. Okay, which is what they've just said that they're doing. If you remember, they've turned us into vampires to save us, but they've turned us into a demon, haven't they? They've turned us into a demon in this video, in this dream, to save us from dying. But Jesus does the opposite. He changes us, and that we are then have an everlasting body, and we have nothing to worry about. We don't need anything to sustain us. It does talk about, obviously, the us going and eating fruit from the tree of life, and there's, what is it, 12 fruits, one for each month of the year. But I guess I don't know why we probably do that, because we're interested in maybe we still have taste buds, we still have that want to eat things, but we probably don't need it. But it does talk about the leaves as well, doesn't it? That heal the nations and stuff. But yeah. So that's what I thought of there. The body changed, and they took us from where we were to be with them, just like Jesus takes us from where we are to be with him. So it felt like a demonic shadow, a complete flip on it, which is what you always see. So that's an interesting one as well. So yeah, I think that's what we'll take away from that, is more or less the demonic realm sort of aspect, and how it's potentially all deception and stuff like that, and also a glimpse into, not that I think this is what will happen. Again, never get that from my dreams, by the way. It's this is my interpretation of it, and it doesn't mean that I've got secret knowledge or anything like that. I'm not ever saying that, because I'm always trying to link it into scripture. Okay, but that's just an interesting inversion, wasn't it, of what we see obviously in the Bible there. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. I will leave it there. I'll leave it there. As I said, I'm going to do a part 2 anyway, and this is where I get loads of other bits of revelation later, and loads of confirmations. So how much revelation is in there, I'm not too sure, but there's a lot of confirmations I wanted to cover off with you. Okay, so I'm going to do a part 2 now.